All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Classic Comics live stream, another Trek Talk where I'll take a look at one of the episodes of the original Star Trek series, taking a look at the episode itself, and also taking a look behind the scenes at the making of the episode. Hello to everyone who's stopped by. Hello, Adega. Always good to see you, Adega Outlaw. Thank you for stopping by. And J Rocker, also good to see you as well. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Um, okay, so I guess I should start. If you do enjoy the stream, please do like the stream. And if you haven't subbed to the channel, please do sub to the channel. And I guess maybe share the stream too, if you could. So today we are taking a look at episode 22 in production order, Return of the Archons. This is one of my. I've always had a fondness for this episode. I think because kind of like with Arena, this is one of the earliest. This is one of the first episodes I remember seeing when I was a kid, and so I've always had a fondness for it. I guess before I go any further, I should mention. I'm sure some folks who watch the stream will know. Uh, Bird O Prey 5, a fellow YouTuber and Star Trek fan, has passed away. Apparently, I was very sorry to hear about that. My condolences to him and his family. Just another loss for this community on YouTube. It's just kind of becoming a worrying trend. There's been quite a few who have passed away here in the last few months. I hope this isn't going to keep going. Okay. So this episode was written by Boris Sobelman, directed by Joseph Pevney. And as always, I'm going to be reading from Mark Cushman's book. These are the voyages for the behind the scenes information. So I'll read from that now. From the TV Guide, February 4th, 1967. Kirk's search for survivors of a long missing starship leads the captain to a society where visitors are treated like an infection, which must be absorbed. The mysterious leader of Beta 3 is Landru. He is both revered and feared by his subjects, a society which offers a curious paradox of its own. The zombie like people are orderly by day, but become hedonistic and violent during an annual nighttime festival. And now some of Kirk's crew have crossed over, turning on their captain and becoming one with the body. The theme deals with Gene Roddenberry's belief that all men are driven by their egos and or fears, and no one man possesses the wisdom, whether it's in the name of religion or government, to rightly control the will of others. Spock says it to Kirk, quote, "This is a society organized on the physiological concept, one body, maintained and controlled by the ones known as lawgivers, directed by one brain." Taking it one step further, this episode attempts to demonstrate what can go wrong when a society submits to the unconditional rule of something less than human. Yeah, so this is the first of several episodes through the series where the Enterprise encounters a society of people who basically, basically they've given control of their society and their civilization over to a machine that basically runs, and if not everything, it certainly makes all the decisions for them. And taking the line, there's that great line from Tron by I think it's Bernard Hughes. Is that the actor who says it? But he has the line where he says, "When programs start thinking, people will stop." And unfortunately, I think that's one that's definitely true. Adega, a tough year, yes, yeah, it definitely has, and Jay Rocker agrees. Um, yeah, I mean, there's things I could say, but yeah, that's not what folks are here for. Okay, so the Return of the Archons has much going for it. The writing is engaging. There is mystery, discovery, and revelation. For its time, the direction and production values are impressive, and Roddenberry's beloved Gulliver's Travels provides the template for the story's hidden political agenda. With 1966 and 67, With the Vietnam War raging in Asia and the Cold War still very much a part of the political climate, the world was divided between East and West, communists and capitalists, and in America, hawks and doves. Archons let Star Trek make a statement about life under the communist system, where individual freedom is stifled in favor of the good of the party, or in this case, the body. Another concern for Roddenberry and others was that as technology advances faster than man's wisdom, the very machines built to serve man will one day kill the human spirit. The concerns voiced here are still relevant today. Yeah, more than ever, I would say. Archons marked the first time that Mr. Scott, still referred to as engineering officer, commands the bridge. And this episode, courtesy of a script polished by Gene Kuhn, introduces and makes the first mention of the prime directive of non-interference. Kuhn even built in a loophole that the policy only applies to living, growing cultures. This was the first episode to bring forth what would soon be a Star Trek formula. The landing party is captured while the Enterprise is attacked, forcing Kirk and his away team to gain their freedom and in order to save the ship. And this was the first time we saw Kirk outthink a machine by using logic or illogic and driving his opponent out of its mechanical mind. What soon became Star Trek cliches were, in this instance at least, still new and effective. Okay, so let's get into this one here. So we get a bit of a different opening here. We open with Sulu and another crewman who we learn is named O'Neill, dressed in garb from the early 1800s, I'd say, running through the streets in a city somewhere. They're confronted by two hooded figures wielding some sort of staves. Or is it staves or staves? I always forget. Sulu calls for an emergency beam out, but O'Neill panics and flees. Then Sulu gets zapped by one of the figures right before he beams back up to the Enterprise. When he rematerializes, Kirk asks where O'Neill is, but Sulu doesn't even seem to know who O'Neill is. And then he says that Kirk and the others are not of the body and starts rambling about someone named Landru and that the planet he came from is paradise. Now, Kirk tells us that the Enterprise is in orbit around Beta 3, where a starship called the Archon disappeared about a century ago. And they were here looking for traces of the ship and its crew. Sulu and O'Neill were sent down to look for traces of the ship or its crew. Now that O'Neill is missing and Sulu appears to have been mentally altered, Kirk leads a landing party down to the planet to get some answers. They're greeted by a man who asks if they've come for the festival and tells them where to get rooms to stay, but tells them that they need to hurry as it's almost the red hour, pointing at the clock tower, which is a few minutes before 6. Now, he asks a woman who's passing by named Tula if her father can give them rooms. But before they can learn anything more, the clock strikes 6 and everyone goes crazy, attacking one another, screaming, yelling, throwing rocks, smashing windows. Kirk and the others are caught up in this melee and are subject to attack. So they flee into a building, the boarding house where they were going to look for rooms, and they meet the elders, the town elders from Footloose, basically. I kid. The elders are immediately suspicious of Kirk and the others when they express surprise at the behavior of the people outside, asking why they aren't participating in the festival. Kirk says they're from the valley. I don't know, San Fernando Valley, one presumes. Now, the man with the darker hair is named Redger, and Tula, the girl they met on the street, is his daughter. Now, one of the crewmen tells him that Tula is caught up in the madness outside, but he just says that he knows then that it is the will of Landru. Kirk asks if they can have rooms for the night, and then the three men argue about whether these strangers should be allowed to stay. Now, the short, surly one here asks, or rather says, that the lawgivers should be told about this, saying that the strangers are clearly not of the body. The taller elder dismisses his concerns, but the short one, Nacon, or Nacub, something like that, says that he is going to tell the lawgivers about the strangers and about the taller one, whose name is Tamar, I believe. Tamar's attitude and his lack of devoutness, which gives Tamar a bit of a fright. He's like, "No, no, no! I worship Landru. Don't tell him." So Kirk and the others are shown to their room, and outside the festival goes on as the town people continue to set fires, smash windows, and attack each other. It's kind of like Miami on spring break week. The next morning at 6 a.m., the clock strikes again, and everyone abruptly resumes their normal activity. You have to say, though, because it isn't made clear that this happens every night or not. I mean, they kind of give the impression that it does. But if it does, then wouldn't this town be completely in ruins? I mean, they basically spend half of every day ransacking the place. I guess it's just a once a year thing, which they never really say what the purpose of this whole festival thing is. Why, because Landru, he's all about, you know, control and about keeping the peace and all this stuff, but then he gives them one night, kind of like the purge. He gives them one night to go crazy. Why does he do that exactly? I don't think the script ever really makes that clear. It's probably something that was in earlier versions of the script that got dropped during rewrites. Okay, so they hear cries downstairs and they go down to the lower room and they find Ridger comforting his daughter. Bone offers to care for her, and Tula's obviously traumatized by what happened last night. But Redger can only say it is Landru's will. Kirk asks Redger about Landru again, and Redger just says that they are not of the body. Then Redger asks if they're Archons, and Kirk asks, "What if we are?" The taller man insists that they must be hidden before the lawgivers arrive, but it's too late because just as he says that, Nacon and a couple of lawgivers barge in. And Nacon tells them that the tall man Tamar is mocked Landru and the strangers scorned the festival. So they zap Tamar with their staves and apparently killing him. Then they tell Kirk that he and the others will be absorbed. Kirk refuses, and I got to admit, this is kind of unintentionally hilarious because they're like, "You will come with us," and Kirk's like, "No," and then they basically just kind of turn to each other like and pause for a moment, and then after apparently communing with Landru or something, then they're like, "We're sorry, we did not understand. Oh, you do not understand. You will come with us to the absorption center, please." If we say please, will you come? Okay, so Kirk says, "You tell Landru that we'll come in our own good time." And then he just snatches the staff away from one of the lawgivers, who just stands there going, "Stop, you cannot." Then they hear a message of some sort from Landru, and then the lawgivers fall into a trance of some sort. Spock examines the staff and notes that it's just a hollow tube. There doesn't appear to be any kind of mechanism inside it. That's something else that's never explained. How do the staves work if there's nothing in them? Redger tells them to follow him. Now, in the streets, the people around them, hearing Landru's call, begin picking up weapons and start to come after Kirk and the others. So they try to flee and they're chased into an alley. And Kirk and the others stun the townspeople with phasers. But then they discover that O'Neill, their missing crewman, is one of the people that they stunned. Kirk orders that he be taken along with them. Redger warns against that, saying that he's now part of the body and will obey Landru, but Kirk insists. This up. There we go. So Redger leads them to a hiding place where he reveals that he's part of a resistance movement. He and Tamar were collaborators. The collaborators work in threes, but he doesn't know who the third party involved in his resistance cell is. Spock also mentions that he is detecting a power source, but he can't locate it. Redger mentions that when the Archons arrived, the Archons obviously being the crewmen from the Archon ship, when they arrived, they resisted Landru, and that Landru pulled them down from the sky, presumably causing their ship to crash. Hearing that, Kirk calls the Enterprise. And Scotty reveals that the ship is under attack by a heat beam of some sort, and they are using so much power, diverting so much power to the deflectors to keep the heat beam off them that they can't even use warp drive or escape from orbit. And he also says that their orbit is starting to decay and that they have about 12 hours before they burn up. Then Landru appears as a hologram, and Kirk demands that he release the Enterprise, but Landru simply says that they bring destruction to a society that knows no fear or conflict and that they will be absorbed. He assures them that they will know peace and contentment within the body. Then a hypersonic signal of some kind renders them all unconscious. Kirk and the others wake up in a prison and find that their communicators and phasers are gone. Then Bones and one of the other crewmen return, and it's immediately clear that they have been absorbed. Bones seems not to recognize Kirk or the others. He speaks and behaves just like the townsfolk and asks Kirk if he is of the body. The lawgivers then tell Kirk to come with them. So they take him to the absorption room where he's shackled into a machine. Then this fellow here, the bald man, arrives and says he'll take over running the absorption machine. We then go back to the prison, and Spock is trying to mind meld with McCoy and basically says that he can't. He doesn't exactly say it in these words, but basically Landru's control is preventing him from making contact with McCoy's mind. Then the lawgivers come and tell Spock to come with them as well. When he arrives at the absorption room, Kirk greets Spock and tells them, "Hello, friend," and assures Spock that he will find peace in the will of Landru. He seems also to have been absorbed. Spock is then put into the absorption machine. And I thought about making this the thumbnail for the episode, but I thought if I did, it might get flagged as gay corn, so I decided not to. It's not what it looks like, seriously. Uh, but the operator of the machine, whose name is Marpin, says that Spock won't be harmed. He says he was unable to spare the first two crewmen who have been absorbed, but Kirk is actually unaffected and just pretending. He also reveals that he is the third member of Redger's resistance cell. He returns the phasers to Spock, and when the guards come back for Spock, he pretends that he is also absorbed and goes back to the prison. Back in the cell, Kirk and Spock try to have a conversation, and I don't know, but it's always amused me, this scene here where they're talking and McCoy is lurking in the background trying to listen. He's like such a busybody. It's like, dude, no one's even talking to you. Buzz off. And I think in this episode, I will say, I think we get a good look at DeForest Kelly's range, a bit of his range as an actor, because before he did Star Trek, DeForest Kelley actually mostly played villains in westerns. You know, he would play rustlers and various bad guys and thugs and stuff. And you know, in the episodes where he's allowed to kind of play a more belligerent character, like in this one, or in say City on the Edge of the Forever, where he goes nuts, he's good at playing crazy. You know, he's good at playing kind of unhinged. Okay. Where was I? Okay, yeah. So he's trying to eavesdrop. Now, Kirk and Spock come to the conclusion that Landru is in fact a machine of some kind, and Kirk insists that it must be deactivated. Spock points out that that would violate the Prime Directive, but Kirk's basically like, "Yeah, dude, yeah, we're fixing this crap. This is BS." Then Redger and Marpan arrive. Marpan returns their communicators, and they begin to talk about Landru, but McCoy overhears them and calls them traitors and calls for the lawgivers. Kirk and Spock then subdue McCoy and the other crewmen. And then when the lawgivers arrive, they overpower the lawgivers and take their robes. And also in this scene, it's worth noting because I noticed it when I was watching the episode, but in this scene, Spock actually punches the lawgiver to subdue him rather than nerve pinching him, which is what you would expect Spock to do. In the behind the scenes notes, it's noted that the director, because of the way the scene was blocked, and also because they had just had him nerve pinch someone, I think earlier, they didn't want to overuse the nerve pinch all the time. So Pevney was just like, just punch him. Okay, so Marpan and Regia reveal that their world was torn by war and conflict, and then Landru brought peace. He reset their society to a more simplistic and peaceful culture, and they've been obeying him ever since. Spock contacts the Enterprise, and Scotty tells them that the Enterprise has about 6 hours left before they burn up. Kirk demands that uh, Reger and Marpan take him to Landru, and Reger freaks out, and Spock has to nerve pinch him to subdue him. Then Marpan reluctantly takes Kirk and Spock to the audience hall, and I really like this set. I don't know why, but I've always thought this looked really good. I think part of it is just the columns; they give it a good sense of depth and perspective on it. So they enter the audience chamber, and there's nothing there. Kirk calls out for Landru. Landru appears, and Landru says that they have caused great harm and that they and all who know about them will have to be executed to protect the body. Kirk and Spock phaser the wall, which reveals the real Landru, or what's left of him, a computer that poses as Landru. Presumably, it was programmed with Landru's knowledge and thoughts, I guess, patterned after his mind. They try to phaser the machine, but Landru deactivates their phasers. And then, of course, we get one of those classic scenes where Kirk outlogics the computer because Spock notes, of course, that's the way to get the computer to stop the computer because the computer's main directive, so to speak, is to protect the body, protect the community. And then Spock and Kirk point out that Landru's complete control of the community is itself harmful because the people can't really live full lives. They can't really live full lives if they can't make their own choices and if they can't have free will. And therefore, his control is harmful, and also that his control is keeping them, stagnant, and they're not advancing or progressing in any way. And eventually, they catch Landru in this kind of logic loop, and then he short circuits. Landru self destructs, and this frees the people of Beta 3 from his control. And I love in this scene how cavalier Kirk is about completely upending their entire civilization. He's basically just like, I guess you're on your own now. Good luck. Now, to be fair, in the closing scene here, he does mention that a team of sociologists is staying behind to help them sort of reorder their society. Uh, Although, again, I mean, they don't have warp drive, so do they? So that, again, it seems like a pretty obvious prime directive violation. But, I mean, Kirk's made it pretty clear he gives no F's about the prime directive. It's basically, yeah, the prime directive matters what I want it to. Okay, so overall, like I said, I'm pretty fond of this episode. I'll give it an A minus. It's just such a classic episode because so many of the classic Trek tropes are there. The parallel society, a society controlled by a machine, and the people are sort of not progressing and sort of stagnant. And again, as they mentioned, the whole idea that the Kirk and some others are down on a planet, the Enterprise is in peril, and they got to fix things down on the planet so they can save the ship. All that's really missing is Kirk having, like a romance with a female character. Okay, so as I mentioned, Joseph Pevney directed, Boris Sobelman wrote this episode, although this is from a story originally by Gene Roddenberry. All right, let me hold on a moment. Let me take a drink of water right quick. Okay, so I'll now go back to Mark Cushman's book. Okay, so Gene Roddenberry came up with the concept for Return of the Archons. It was in his 1964 series proposal as a story synopsis called The Perfect World, his first try at a story outline. It was a contender for the first Star Trek pilot film, which he later changed. He later changed the title to Landru's Paradise. It was sent to NBC, but they passed it over in favor of The Cage. Freelance writer Boris Sobelman picked it up from there. He worked in television throughout the 1960s, providing scripts for Thriller and Alfred Hitchcock Presents. In 1966, the same year Sobelman wrote this episode, he also wrote episodes for The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Girl from U.N.C.L.E., and Run for Your Life. He also had just been nominated for a Writers Guild Award for an episode of Dr. Kildare. When Sobelman asked to see the series Bible and a sample script, Roddenberry also provided a copy of his own outline for Landru's Paradise. Sobelman took the hint and requested to build the story into a teleplay with a new title, also supplied by Roddenberry. The name Archons came from a debating club that Roddenberry had belonged to during his time at Los Angeles City College. It was taken from the Greek word archon, meaning a leader or a ruler. By the time Sobelman's story outline was turned in on August 19th, 1966, Gene Kuhn was in the middle of his first week as Star Trek's new producer. Sobelman was taking a path that rightfully should have landed on another's back. Robert Justman was unaware. Robert Justman really liked the script, but he was unaware that Roddenberry had come up with the original story. Sobelman had neglected to add Roddenberry's name to the cover page on the teleplay, an oversight that Roddenberry would notice later. Justman worried that the story as originally written was too costly. For example, in one scene he wrote how Sobelman called for the lawgivers to use a, quote, triple-barreled optical beam shooting device to blast away at a couple of people. This would be downgraded to the hollowed tube staffs the lawgivers carry, which emit a brief sparkle and puff of smoke, thereby saving money that could be spent on post-animation. Now, Justman felt that the ending with Kirk outwitting a machine and causing it to self-destruct was a bit much and not in keeping with the tone of the story. But he had heard that Kuhn, now in his third week on the job, hadn't known what to make of his sarcasm in his previous memos, so Justman just held his punches for the first 5 pages. Um, okay. And of course, like many, this went through a lot of rewrites. I'm not going to go through all of them here. Joseph Pevney returned to Star Trek. He kept Arena both on schedule and under budget while rendering it in grand scope. To fill up the town and bring about the festival, Return of the Archons required more guest players and extras than any episode filmed so far. Only City on the Edge of Forever would have a larger cast. Harry Towns played Redger, the owner of the boarding house and first of the 3 leaders of the resistance we meet. He was 52 and had close to 200 credits in TV and film, including multiple appearances on The Twilight Zone, Thriller, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and The Wild Wild West. Torrin Thatcher played Marplum. Actually, I should probably be showing these people, shouldn't I? Yeah, so there's Redger, Harry Towns as Redger, and Torrin Thatcher as Marplum. The Inside Man. He was 61. Starting in 1952, he appeared in roughly 200 films and TV. 1 year before this, he appeared in an episode of Lost in Space titled The Space Trader. Now, John Lormer, let me bring him up. So he was the other elder that they initially meet. There he is. Would appear in 3 episodes of Star Trek. And I didn't realize this until they mentioned it, but when they did, I immediately recognized him. So John Lormer here, he was in The Cage. He actually was Vena's father, or of course, like an image that claimed to be Vena's father. Of course, he wasn't real. He was just an image the Telosians created, but yeah, he played Vena's father in that episode. And he would appear again in For the World is Hollow and I Have Touched the Sky. Now, Morgan Farley at 78 played the hostile Nakan. Or Haken, I'm sorry, it's Haken, not Nakan. He had been working steadily in front of the cameras since the 1920s. He would return again as a tribal elder in the Omega Glory. Now, let me find Chula. There she is. Brioni Farrell, who was 21, played Tula. She was new to television, but was already getting roles in The Man from U.N.C.L.E., The Wild Wild West, and Bonanza. Christopher Carl Held played the sociologist Lindstrom. This is him in the background here. And yeah, one thing about this episode that I did find interesting is how many crewmen there are, because I mean, the other, aside from Kirk, Spock, and McCoy, it's not like the others really need to be there, you know? And then over here, in addition to Held playing Lindstrom, over here, we've got Eddie Paskey playing, I assume he's playing, what is it, Kelly? Isn't that the name? Lieutenant Kelly, I think. Okay. Okay, so for Held, he worked often in TV as a regular on several series. Among those prior to this, he spent a year on Perry Mason. And in about 20 years later, he would enjoy a long run on the TV soap opera Falcon Crest. Sean Morgan and his character, Lieutenant O'Neill. Where can I find? Let's go back to O'Neill at the beginning here. There he is. Let's see. He had already appeared in as O'Neill in The Balance of Terror, and he would appear again in other episodes, including The Ultimate Computer and The Tholian Web. And hello, James Caserta. Hello, sir. Andrew Lan Russia. Yeah, I guess so. I don't know. They don't say anything about that, but I guess that could be it. Okay, let's see. Charles McCarley, who's he? Okay, Charles Macaulay. I guess I'm not sure which one that is. Charles Macaulay was 39. He was unrecognizable as the man who played Landru. Okay, that's Landru. I'm sorry. He is Landru. Let me see. No, there we go. There he is. He would also appear as Jairus in Wolf in the Fold. And later that season, he would also appear as a Nazi assassin in Child Out of Time, Child Out of Time, an episode of I Spy. Lev Mailer as Bylar, and I believe that's the guy. That's this guy, I believe. Um, he began working in television here. He would return to Star Trek in Patterns of Force. And yeah, again, Eddie Paskey right here. Of course, he appeared frequently in the background on the bridge, and he was Shatner's stand-in when they were doing lighting setups and stuff. And he was sort of the body double in The Enemy Within as the evil Kirk. This was his 19th appearance, and he would make 59 appearances on the show through the series. Also with the landing party was David Ross, making his third of 9 appearances. And I don't think he's in this shot, but he was the other crewman that's here. I don't think he ever gets a name. Now, Bobby Clark, who is one of the stuntmen who played the Gorn in Arena, he has a brief, and I didn't get a screenshot of it, but during the festival scenes, there's one guy shown screaming, "Festival, festival," and then he jumps through a window, and that's him. That's the guy that wore the Gorn suit. I should have gotten a screenshot of him. I neglected to do that. And he would appear again in Mirror, Mirror. Okay. Jay Rocker says Landru's look was about 20 years ahead of its time. His hairstyle was pretty much a new wave punk style. You know, yeah, you might be right on that. I hadn't thought of that. I did think that his hair looked kind of 80s, but yeah, he does have kind of like a flock of seagulls kind of thing going on, doesn't he? Okay. So where was I? All right. So filming took place on stage 9 in the bridge set. Also, the viewing screens above the control stations had been replaced after they looked so worn and crumpled in the last few episodes. Now, on day 2, the company returned for its second visit to Desilu's 40 acres lot. Let me get a good shot of the streets here. There we go. And of course, this was previously used in which episode was? I think it was Miri. Yeah, they used this same set in Miri. And as mentioned in my stream about Miri, so this was they did a lot of filming of different shows on this lot. Of course, it was used quite a bit. At this time, primarily, this set was actually Mayberry for the Andy Griffith show, and it says in here that they actually had to schedule shooting on the back lot around the filming of a Andy Griffith episode. Okay. Um, Yeah, the first day of filming was a long one as they filmed all the daylight scenes on the streets prior to the start of festival, and then the violence of the festival itself during the night. Lev Mailer, who played Bylar, recalled, people were walking on a beat. I was so nervous I couldn't do it, and Joe Pevney, the director, came over and took me by the hand and he said, "Now walk with me." He walked me across the street at the required pace to sort of settle me down, and then I was fine. There was a curious continuity error regarding Mailer's performance. He explained, they said, this is going to be New England circa late 19th century. And I said, so you want a little bit of New England in my accent, you know? And they said, oh, yeah, yeah, sure. But of course, when I finally saw the program, I'm the only one with an accent. Everyone else is just doing it straight. The clock tower itself was built specifically for this episode. Nearby on this same piece of real estate in 1966, just down the street was the Marine base used by Gomer Pyle and also the German concentration camp from Hogan's Heroes. Hey, Snorty Poopus Cuber. Hello, sir. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by. Okay. So on day 4 of shooting, uh, they returned to stage 9 and the dungeon set. The script called for Spock to administer the Spock neck pinch on one of the lawgivers. But since he had already done this more than once in the episode already, and the blocking Pevney had planned for the scene would make it difficult for Nimoy to position himself properly, Spock had to improvise by slugging one of the lawgivers. Kirk ad-libs a line, isn't that a bit old-fashioned? During this episode, we also see how Spock sleeps with his eyes open. This was an improv by Nimoy, and it was not in the script. With a 7th day of production, including all the location work needed and extra set construction and dozens of extra performers, Archons became one of the more expensive Star Trek episodes. That big supporting cast that worried both Justman and Kuhn wound up costing the series $28,395. The sets, dressings, wardrobe, and props ran more than $32,000 alone. The total cost of the episode would be $210,000, or $210,000 $1,000 and $793, roughly 1.5 million in 2013. Okay, so this episode came in third during its first half hour, behind Bewitched and My Three Sons with a 27.9% audience share. And then the second half hour, from 9 to 9:30, came in second in its time slot at with a 30.4% audience share. Now, Brian Sobelman, with help from Stephen Karabatsos, Kuhn, and Roddenberry, had put plenty of drama on the screen with the return of the Archons, but there was also drama behind the scenes regarding the names on the script. Roddenberry got the story credit he demanded and deserved, and the paycheck that went along with it. Sobelman, who had neglected to add Roddenberry's name to the script, was never asked to return to Star Trek. Gee, I wonder why. In early 1968, the script was nominated for a Writers Guild Award as Best Screenplay for a 1-hour drama. It was a good script, but certainly not the best of the Star Trek episodes that aired that year. The reason the Guild singled this out over all the others is because it was the only script that was shown to them that was sent in by Roddenberry. Years later, Star Trek's creator would tell TV Guide Archons was one of his 10 favorite episodes from the original series. Carl Held, who played Lindstrom, said, quote, Star Trek was well done and imaginative. The premise made for good stories, and they were well realized by the writers. Okay. So that's about it. And did I give a grade? If I did give a grade, I give this one an A minus. I think I mentioned my grade already. Yeah, so a solid Star Trek episode overall. One like I say, I'm quite fond of. All right, so next week I'll move on to episode 23 in production order, which is Space Seed. And until then, I guess I'll go ahead and end the stream here. Again, thanks to everyone who tuned in during the stream and those who will check it out on a rewatch. And I will see you all next time. Have a good night.